Hello, Naomi and Mike. My name's Brian. I'm making a second detailed walk around video for you of the my 42 Chevy 3/4 ton that you're interested in and I have up for sale. So I'm going to try to be as detailed as I can, and I'll give you a walk around tour of the truck so you can see exactly what we got here. So first of all, it was restored from the frame up about 10 years ago. Every nut and bolt on this truck was taken apart, replaced, refurbished, and the nuts and bolts were all replaced with stainless steel and put back together again. Again, like I said before, it's an all steel body. There's no body filler on it. The dents and cracks that were stress cracks that were in the frame, I had brought to a metal worker that pushed them all out with a English wheel and gave all the body parts back to me in bare metal, so he could see, so I would be able to see that there was no body filler used. So the paint is a clear coat paint that's been buffed out. There's no orange peel. The black and the blue paint is mirror glass finish. The wheels are bias ply tires, as the original would have had, and the brakes are still the original drum brakes, which I've had the brake shoes relined when I did the restoration. The truck only goes about 55 or 60 miles an hour tops. Never had a problem with the brakes and never felt I needed to switch them over to disc brakes, and I wanted to keep the truck original because it is a 42 when I did restore it. So it's still a 6-volt system. Nothing's been upgraded. Still much the way it was in 1942. So starting off here on the front, one of the one of the drawbacks is if you look closer at the grill, I do have a line of dent right here in the front of the grill. It's pretty slight, but it's there, and I want to point that out to you. New reproduction grill, I think, was about, or refurbished grill was about $800 or so, and I just never redid it. So we'll take a walk around. The bumpers were redone from Bumper Boys in California. The truck, I want to point out too, 1942, it only had one windshield wiper. You could see the stub sticking out there. I've never put the windshield wiper on because I broke the new one, and I never drove the truck in the rain anyway, so I never bothered with it. But in 1942, the options for the truck was a passenger side windshield washer, which I don't have, a passenger side mirror, which I didn't have. The heater was an option. I do not have a heater in it. I don't drive it in the winter because we have road salt up here in the north, and they usually put down road salt and it kind of flies around the air all winter long, and I didn't want it on the truck, so I didn't need a heater. The cab gets fairly warm anyway, and I never felt the need for it. And the other option was the passenger side tail light, which again I don't have. The bed, although it's originally black painted pine, when I did the restoration I wanted to do varnished oak to make it look sharp. So that's not an original, not what the bed would have originally looked like in 1942, but I thought this was much sharper. The tailgate has no chains on it. As you can see, I bolted it shut because I'm not going to be opening and closing the tailgate, and they tend to swing around and scratch the paint up anyway, so I never bothered with it. Again, as I mentioned, I never mounted the rear bumper. It's just one of those things that has never gotten done, but I plan on doing it soon, whether or not you're interested in it, just because it's been laying around and it needs to be done. I do have a spare tire for it. There's the mounting bracket, if you could see it right above the pumpkin. I do have a spare, I do have a spare rim. I never spent the money to buy the extra spare tire. Never mounted it. So as far as the spare tire goes, all I have is a spare rim, military style rim, I think they call them, for the truck. Underneath, when I did the frame off restoration, I never cleaned under here. It's gotten dusty. It's got a little bit of rust from the moving parts. That just happens. The spring's flexing and moving around and stuff. It's pretty much, I'm trying to give you a good picture of what it looks like underneath, but it's going to be one of those things. It's going to be hard to see exactly what it looks like underneath without seeing it. Now over here you do notice there is some rust on the paint where it's chipped off. The problem with this truck is the wheel seals only last a few years in the brakes, and they're very simple, and I have to replace them. The reason I have to replace them is after a couple of years they start leaking brake fluid. So every time I have to do a wheel seal, the brake fluid runs on the paint and it just eats it off, and I've never repainted it because I don't know, it's just one of those things. I have 10 million other things to do, and I'll probably end up having to repaint anyway when the next wheel cylinder wears out. New wheel cylinders cost me about, I think they're around $40 each every time I've had to replace them, and they generally last maybe 3-4 years or something like that each. I guess I've gotten out of them. They can be rebuilt for a couple dollars, but I always just get new ones and stick them on, so it's no big deal. So you're asking about leaks. As you can see, when I put the new seal on the pumpkin, I also put in the black what's it called, gasket maker on the bottom of the half to prevent that from leaking on the pumpkin. I do get a couple drips out of the bottom of the pumpkin. I guess it's coming from the pinion seal, which I've replaced once already, thinking maybe I just didn't put in the first one the right way or something, and I still get a couple drops, and that's about it for all the drips on the floor. Very, very minor, but nonetheless I wanted to mention it. So come up here, give you a good oversight of the engine. Try to again. It's the original 216 engine. I had it taken all apart completely. I had the Babbitt bearings replaced with traditional bearings. The cylinders are modern. Not cylinders. The pistons are modern aluminum pistons. The head was redone. The valves were seated, and I've always burned gasoline with lead additive in it. The radiator I did have out, and I had record. The white stuff that you're seeing on there is just product from when I had the body work done years ago and never cleaned it. I'm sure if you hit it with a power washer, it'd come right out. It's just the dust and stuff like that. The generator was taken out and rebuilt. The wiring harness replaced. Never had any problems with the carburetor. The inline fuel filter is not original. I put that in as a precaution. The horn is there. It works. But the horn button is missing, and just never used it. As far as the drips of oil that you see here, there's nothing significant. Now, while I'm making this video, I just noticed that my valve cover gasket isn't completely underneath the valve cover, so that's probably having something to do with the extra oil that you were seeing here. I'll have to fix that, but I just noticed it now while I'm making this video. So the oil that will come out of the engine is on top of the valve covers. There's two vents, and they generally always kind of have some kind of oil misty coming out of them. I heard of a quick fix for that. People stuff like some kind of brass filter or something in there, but I haven't had too much of a problem. I get a little bit of oil on the firewall sometimes, and I just wipe it off, and I haven't really worried about it. That bracket there is the gasket and the bracket to hold the wires going through the firewall together. There's two screws that hold that on. I guess that's just another thing I've never gotten done. The voltage regulator has been replaced with a reproduction, and I guess that's about it for this side. Um, I guess that's about it for this side. Let's take a look at the other side. Now, all the chrome parts that I have on the truck, they are reproduction. I do have the originals. Everything original that was on the truck, I've kept. But it was just less expensive to buy reproduction chrome as opposed to re-chroming the old stuff at the time. So you should know that. These strips along the hood here are the originals. But yeah, it's the other side here. It has its a little bit of oil on there, but nothing that's dripping on the ground there. That's dripped on the ground before yet. I've never cleaned in here in all the miles I've put on it and the years that have gone by, and this is what it looks like. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a little dirty, but there's no huge problems. The starters, never had a problem with. It's a reproduction fuel pump I changed from the original just as a precaution. Plugs, wires, and all that. So try to go underneath here, and I'll show you the engine underneath. And you were asking about oil leaks. There's the oil pan. No drips. The bottom of the oil pan. So I'm hoping you could kind of see that. But again, undercarriage is kind of rough. We all know that that's just going to have to be something you look at for yourself. I wouldn't say it's museum quality underneath, but you know, I've driven the truck and had fun with it. I never used it as just a showpiece. So we'll move to the interior. Let me go around the other side, actually. Go around to the other side. I'll open this up. The interior is it's all original. I've kept it all original. Painted the hammer tone paint. It's a little dirty right now, but it's just dirt. All the windows and the doors work fine. They roll up and go back down as they originally would have in 1942. The doors close on both sides. They don't rattle. As you see, I'm shaking the truck. They don't rattle and jiggle while you're going down the street. And more importantly, if you look at the body lines, they're all straight from where the doors meet up. All the body lines are straight and they're tight, and no wind blowing in, no sound of air at all. It's a quiet and smooth running truck. When I did the restoration, I did put a heat shield and sound barrier in underneath the floor and the ceiling behind the firewall, as you can kind of see up here. And I just kind of painted it black. There was no insulation in these cabs in 1942, and in the summertime the truck got pretty hot, pretty warm. So I wanted to, you know, put in a sound barrier and a bit of a heat resistance. The seat was redone. It's the original frame. I bought a kit for it that's all completely redone. No rips or tears or anything like that. The horn button, like I was saying here, is not in the truck. And to show you that the horn does work, you just attach the two wires and the horn works. Just complete the circuit. That's the horn. So it does work. It is hooked up. I just never put the button in the spring. I don't know. It's just one of those things that is on my to-do list and never got to done. So pretty much. All the gauges work. The battery. Under here, this button here is for the cowl vent. I'm going to push it, and you'll see the cowl vent in the front open up fully. When you're driving around in the summertime, you really kind of need that. The windshield, you were asking me, it's very common on these trucks that the windshield no longer fully opens up anymore. And I had the frame restored. It was rusted in the corners, which is everything typical of them. I wanted to keep the truck original because it was 42, so I paid the extra money to have the windshield frame restored, and it's still fully functioning opening front windshield, which again in the winter in the summer you really kind of need. When it's 90 degrees out or so, you open the cal vent and you open the windshield while you're driving. It blows in the air. It's absolutely fantastic. You kind of don't have to wonder why they didn't bother with air conditioning back then, because it wasn't totally necessary. Now, you wanted me to show a video of the truck driving. I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do this, but I'm going to give it a try. But I'll show you the inside first. We have the throttle and the choke, two of which things I've never had to use. Even in the winter when the truck is sitting for a couple months, I just crank it until the fuel gets up to the carburetor, and she pretty much just kicks over without me ever having to use the choke or the clutch. I mean the choke or the throttle, but there they are. Fully functioning glove box that's been restored also. I don't think it locks. I never locked it, never tried. I'm not even sure the key would really work. But on the floor, excuse my socks, but on the floor we have the gas pedal that's original, that's never been restored, the gas and the clutch, and the starter button over here. So to start it, oh, this is emergency brake, which I don't have on. So to start it, it's just like any other vehicle. You I'm on a hill right now. Just push the starter and you're pretty much ready to go. Well, she's kind of running a little rough because I didn't warm it up. I just kind of pulled it out of the garage. Could probably use a tune-up, which I plan on doing at some point this summer. If you're interested, I'll have that taken care of before you purchase it. But again, I've just been using it the way it has. So we'll take a little ride here. The engine's not warmed up. Generally the truck in this year, and all vehicles of this year, they've all worked best after you warm them up. So this is me driving it down the street right now, cold. And when we drive over the bumps, you could listen about there's no rattle from the doors, no shimmy and shake. My hand's off the steering wheel, it drives straight. It's fairly smooth ride. Again, it's a 75-year-old truck, so it doesn't ride like a Cadillac, but it doesn't ride like a hoopty piece of crap anyway. It's a 3-speed transmission. Again, my top speed is about 55, maybe 60 miles an hour. She's kind of screaming, but I've driven her to shows 65 miles away on the highway and back roads, and I've never really had a problem. I live in New Jersey and people drive kind of crazy here, so I try to stay off the interstates just so I don't get ran over by a tractor trailer. But that's pretty much it. Pretty easy steering, still manual steering, the original steering box. The steering box was not, nothing was done with the steering box when I did the restoration. Still works fine. I think I might have tightened up the worm gear to get a little play out of the steering wheel, but it still works fine, and I that's one thing I never took apart to do anything with. It's just a box full of gears, and I never felt like it needed any kind of attention, so I never gave it any. Grinding of the transmission is me screwing up, so that's all that is. But it is an eye-catching truck. Like I said, it's one of the rare 1942, which is more uncommon than the 41s or the 46s. They all have the same body style, and the condition of the trucks varies completely. Greatly differs from one restoration to the other. Because this truck was a 1942 and rare, I spent a particular long, detailed restoration of the truck to bring it back to what it used to be. And I guess that's probably it for the tour. I guess I should point out the headliner too. That was replaced. That's just a piece of cardboard. That's not original, but the old one and the new was just a piece of cardboard, so it has some bends in it, but I don't know what you do about it. Like I said, it's like a paper board. It's the way it was made from the start, and that's what the reproduction material was. I guess point this out too. These extra wires were for turning signals. I guess if you're wondering about them, but the truck never had turning signals. A lot of people put them in afterwards as an aftermarket, but I never did. I kept it original. But down here, the floor mat, I kind of did a bad job putting it in. Instead of taking the steering wheel off and sliding it over the steering column like you should, I got the idea that I should just cut it and put it back together, and it looks sloppy. So that's pretty much it. But the floor mats you can buy easily. There's a couple different distributors that you could buy any part that you want for this truck. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope I answered some questions for you. And if you have any more, you're welcome to reach out to me. You have my email, my number, and that's pretty much it. Like I said, all the original parts that came off of this truck, I still have, and they will stay with the truck when and if it gets sold. All right. Thank you very much.